The Capitol Hill hearing room was packed. Bright lights from news cameras made the air feel hotter than usual. Every seat was filled. The words National Security Oversight Session blinked in bold across the C-SPAN broadcast screen. Representative Jasmine Crockett sat straight-backed at the long mahogany table. Her fingers tapped quietly against her folder. She had spent the entire night preparing. Her eyes didn't shift. Across from her sat Kash Patel, former Trump advisor, and a name often heard in intelligence circles, especially when things went wrong. Patel was mid-sentence. His voice was steady but carried a smirk, the kind that made it sound like he wasn't taking the hearing seriously. "We did what was necessary," he said into the microphone. "You people sitting here judging from your cushy seats weren't in the field. You weren't the ones facing daily threats." Crockett leaned forward slightly, her hands calm. "Mr. Patel," she said, voice clear, "with all due respect, the threats didn't give you a license to ignore protocol. According to this classified briefing," she lifted a red-marked folder, "you've bypassed standard chain of command at least 6 times. Can you explain why?" Patel shifted in his seat. His smirk widened, but there was a flicker in his eyes. "Congresswoman," he replied, "you're asking questions you barely understand the weight of." A low sound rolled through the room, half gasp, half groan. "I understand perfectly," Crockett said sharply. "You used your power to label activists as threats. You personally signed off on unauthorized surveillance against American citizens." Patel chuckled, mocking her. "Sure," he said. "Let's pretend you've cracked some code. Maybe next you'll accuse me of spying on Girl Scouts." Crockett didn't blink. And yet she continued, "You never filed an internal audit. Not once. Either you were too arrogant or too afraid." Patel's mouth twitched. He leaned closer to the mic, narrowed his eyes, and then it came. "Why don't you go back to the zoo?" said, slow and deliberate, as if daring the room to challenge him. It was like a bomb dropped in silence, gasps, audible, real, the kind that tighten a room's air like a plastic bag. Crockett did not flinch. She didn't look surprised, just ... still. The committee chair didn't bang the gavel. No aide spoke. Even the C-SPAN announcer in the control booth, watching from behind the glass, forgot to breathe. Crockett leaned into her mic. "Mr. Patel," she began, her voice calm but fierce, "when you reduce a black woman asking questions in a congressional hearing to an animal, you are not insulting me. You're confirming everything broken in the system you served." Her tone was even, almost gentle. "A scream? You think your privilege shields you," she continued. "You think this microphone and this badge protect you from accountability, but they don't." Phones began to rise silently, recording from behind binders, notebooks, even under desks. Crockett didn't raise her voice. "You called me something you thought would silence me, but I was raised on silence. I was raised watching people speak truths and get punished for it." Patel looked around the room now, his fake grin starting to slip. "I will not be reduced," she said. "I will not be erased." The hearing room wasn't a room anymore. It was history happening in real time. Somewhere a staffer fumbled their coffee. A reporter wiped his glasses, stunned. Someone in the far back whispered, "My God," and then click. Hundreds of viewers across the country hit record on their live streams. On every phone, tablet, and monitor, her words were spreading like fire. Outside, the sun beat down. On the Capitol dome, inside, no one moved. They had just witnessed a reckoning, quiet, powerful, and irreversible. The committee room didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. Jasmine Crockett's voice still lingered in the air like static after a lightning strike. Kash Patel sat motionless, staring forward, his face now drained of its smugness. Around him, aides whispered to each other. One of the senior intelligence analysts leaned back slowly, removing his glasses. Representative Hakeem Jeffries, seated further down the panel, glanced toward the chairman, then back at Crockett. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The silence cracked when the committee chair finally picked up his gavel. "This hearing will return to order," he said. But his voice sounded hollow. Weak, Crockett didn't look away from Patel. She wasn't grandstanding. She wasn't angry. Her eyes were locked, measured, unblinking. She had made her point, and now she was watching the fallout. Then came the ripple. First, a single phone notification buzzed in the press row. Then another and another. A reporter, near the back, looked down and went pale. He nudged his colleague and tilted the phone toward him. A 12-second video clip Crockett's response had just been posted on a political watchdog's Twitter account. It already had 80,000 views. Within seconds, that number would triple. The video had a simple title: "The Moment the Room Froze." In a side chamber behind the wall, security agents huddled over a monitor feed. A woman in a black blazer whispered into a secure headset. She didn't break protocol, she said. Her mic was hot. He provoked. Sue responded within decorum. Still, her partner replied, "This is going to be on every platform in 20 minutes." Outside, protesters began gathering at the steps of the Capitol. What had begun as a quiet policy session had now turned into something much larger. And someone had just lit the fuse. Inside the chamber, Kash Patel leaned into his microphone again, trying to recover. "I want to clarify my remark was not racial. It was an unfortunate turn of phrase. Not directed." Crockett's mic was still on. "You don't get to rewrite it now," she said quietly. The chairman banged the gavel harder this time. "That's enough." But the damage was already spreading. Elsewhere in D.C., in a darkened media war room 3 blocks from the White House, a group of staffers watched the hearing live. "Do we comment?" One aide asked. "Do we distance?" Another staffer, standing near a whiteboard covered in names and red lines, just shook his head. "We monitor. But if Crockett trends in the next hour, everything shifts." A shadowy figure, an older man in a gray tailored suit, stepped out of the hallway and approached the screen. "Pull her file," he said. "Every donor, every speaking engagement, every ally. If she's going to rise, we need to know where the ceiling is." Back in the hearing room, reporters were packing up, heading outside to file emergency updates. No one cared about Patel's written statement anymore. The story wasn't in the documents it was in the temperature of the room, and it was boiling. Crockett stood up slowly. She didn't storm out. She didn't smile for the cameras. She gathered her notes, slipped them into her leather folio, and nodded once to the chairman. "Thank you for the time, Mr. Chair," she said. Then she walked straight past Patel. He didn't lift his eyes. He looked like a man who had walked into a fight he didn't understand and wasn't prepared to finish. As she exited the chamber, the hallway lights flickered just for a second. She noticed it. Others didn't, but someone watching through the Capitol's internal surveillance feed did. Deep beneath the building, in a secure server room used by 3-letter agencies. A low-priority alert triggered. Influence shift detected node. C-34 subject. J. Crockett. A figure in a Navy uniform leaned over the terminal. "Ma'am," he said to his commanding officer, "we may have a new variable." Outside, Jasmine Crockett stepped into a sea of microphones. She didn't say anything at first. She didn't need to. The cameras clicked furiously. One reporter shouted, "Congresswoman, was that moment planned?" Another yelled, "Do you regret anything you said?" She finally raised her head, met their gaze, and said, "He called it a zoo. I showed him it wasn't." That was the soundbite that would be played on every news cycle tonight, and tomorrow, and maybe for the next week. In a studio 2,000 miles away, a popular late-night host rewrote his monologue. In a boardroom at a major news outlet, executives canceled a pre-taped segment to run live coverage. And in several campaign offices, both red and blue, phones rang off the hook. Everyone was asking the same question: who is Jasmine Crockett? What happens next? A rainstorm swept over Washington, D.C. by midnight, but the Capitol didn't sleep. C-SPAN had already re-aired the hearing twice, and clips of Jasmine Crockett's sharp, quiet takedown were now circulating across every major platform. Headlines screamed, "Crockett shatters Patel's defense in historic hearing racism called out live." And Congress held its breath. Remark sparks political firestorm. What began as a tense exchange inside a congressional room had now become the kind of national reckoning that couldn't be contained. In the war rooms of 3 presidential campaigns, 2 Republican. One Democrat strategist circled Crockett's name on the whiteboards. "She's more than viral," a Democratic Comes director said. "She's untouchable now." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't break. And she's trending with independents. Meanwhile, over on a rival network, a panel of conservative analysts debated Patel's future. One analyst said his comment wasn't defensible, period. Another countered, but was it worth ending his career? We've weaponized outrage. In an undisclosed intelligence center northeast of the Capitol, red digital maps pulsed with heat signatures, data streams of keywords, sentiment analysis, and social media response rates. Jasmine Crockett's name spiked so high on their crisis matrix, it lit up 3 alert clusters. A tech staffer leaned into her headset, flag her file, move her from influential to unstable variable, monitor 24/7s, no contact, yet. But something else was happening behind the scenes. The hearing had triggered an automated pattern recognition sequence buried deep within an experimental DHSAI program codenamed Dominion Trace. It wasn't just Crockett's speech. It was the silence afterward, the digital dead zone, the sudden change in engagement from known bot farms to dormant civilian accounts. Something had shifted in how information moved, and someone was watching it happen. Back in Crockett's district office in Texas, her team worked through the night. Volunteers answered nonstop phone calls. Campaign donors sent emails asking how they could support. Some wanted to host her on podcasts. Others talked about drafting her for national office. Her chief of staff, Deja, stood over a desk full of press clippings and media inquiries. "She broke the internet," Deja muttered. "But now we gotta manage the fallout." Crockett, sitting quietly in the corner, hadn't changed clothes since the hearing. She looked tired but calm, focused. She stared at a paused frame on her phone, her face mid-sentence. Right after the zoo remark. "What are you thinking?" Deja asked. Jasmine looked up. "I think I hit something bigger than Patel. I think I stepped on a pressure point the whole system's been trying to hide." Deja nodded. "You did, and now they're going to come for you." At that exact moment, somewhere in Northern Virginia, an encrypted signal was sent to a private device. A former intelligence contractor named Eva Thorne received the alert. She opened it in a cabin with blackout curtains and analog landlines. CR77 has breached media shell. Risk of vector exposure 37%. Deploy asset for confirmation. Eva sighed. She knew what this meant. Jasmine Crockett had entered the attention field of Project Virex, a buried black budget task force monitoring influence fractures in democratic institutions. Normally, political blow-ups were just noise. This wasn't normal. Meanwhile, Kash Patel had gone dark. He declined all press requests. His team disabled his Twitter replies. Rumors flew he'd been asked to resign from 2 think tanks. His book launch tour was quietly canceled. A source close to him leaked that he had received a personal call from a high-level fixer who advised him to take a vacation abroad immediately. But Patel wasn't finished. Late at night, in a secured residence in D.C., he sat with 3 men in suits. Their faces didn't show up on government directories. They weren't politicians. They weren't lobbyists. They were handlers. Of them lit a cigar and leaned forward. "She's dangerous," he said, "because she embarrassed you." Another asked. "No," the first man said. because she didn't break the rules and the people loved it. Patel wiped his face. What now? The third man, silent until now, finally spoke. We expose her. Something from her past. Or, we provoke her into making a mistake. Patel raised an eyebrow. You want her baited? The man nodded. She's clean right now, but we make her messy. Back in Texas, Jasmine finally turned off her phone and looked out the window. Her district quiet. Her career suddenly changed. And her instincts now fully awake. She turned to Deja. I need to know who's pulling strings on the inside. Patel didn't act alone. That comment was planned. Or worse expected. Deja frowned. You think this was staged? Jasmine nodded. Or recorded. Either way, someone's watching me now. And she was right. Because 3,000 miles away, inside a Department of Energy research facility, a computer flagged her name again. Next to it, potential catalyst IDD, activate phase delta inquiry. Rain tapped against the hotel window as Jasmine Crockett stared at the glowing skyline of D.C. she had flown in quietly under a private itinerary. Avoiding major airports. The backlash from the hearing wasn't over, it was mutating. Threats had started to come in, vague, cryptic, but unmistakably coordinated. Her team had insisted she stay low, but Crockett was never one to disappear. Downstairs in a private meeting room, she sat with two advisors, Deja, her chief of staff, and Marcus, a cybersecurity consultant who had once worked for the NSA. He spoke first. Your phone was pinged 47 times in the last 12 hours by surveillance-grade devices. Not ad trackers, not apps. Real surveillance tech. Jasmine folded her arms. Government. Marcus shook his head. Not officially. But whoever's doing, it has access to clearance-level tools, Deja added. Also, someone tried to reset your secure email account from an IP that traces to Reston, Virginia. Guess who's based there? Fence contractors? Jasmine replied. Marcus nodded, and think tanks that blurred the lines. There was a silence. Then Jasmine said what none of them wanted to say aloud. This isn't about Patel anymore, is it? No, Marcus said. This is about what your words stirred. You didn't just speak truth, you cracked open a seam. And now, something's leaking out. Deja slid a folder across the table. There's more. Look at these. Inside were two internal memos leaked by a whistleblower inside. A federal agency Jasmine had never heard of before. Office of Strategic Harmonization. The memos weren't stamped. No logos. Just plain font. Sharp language. The first memo referenced public disruption vector number 41A Crockett Patel incident. The second memo ended with a line that chilled her. Containment preferred. Conversion. If possible, discreditation if necessary. Is this ... real? She whispered. Marcus nodded. It's too detailed to be fake. Whoever wrote these has access to case files, psychological profiles, even your law school disciplinary record. Jasmine didn't flinch, but her breath slowed. They're preparing a takedown. It's 3 blocks away, under the marble calm of a federal archive building, a black door elevator opened into an underground conference room. 6 people sat at a long table. All were dressed in civilian clothes. None gave names. At the center was a man with a voice like polished gravel. She deviated, he said flatly. Another voice responded. She responded. That's different. A woman in a red scarf leaned forward. Patel was supposed to bait her into an emotional outburst. Racial heat? Yes, but discreditable heat. Instead, she froze him. The opposite of the algorithm's predicted behavior. A pause. Then the first voice again. We escalate. Misdirection. We leak the Arkansas file. The one with the protest arrest? Stale, said the woman. Old. Stick, people like her being defiant. Then we make it about hypocrisy. Someone else added. Show her talking elite. Fancy schools. Tie her to corporate donors. Turn her into them. That's how we beat symbols. We make them ordinary. They all agreed. The op would start tonight. Hashtag campaigns. Edited clips. Influence clusters activated. By morning, the Crockett wave would slow, then reverse. That was the plan. But Jasmine wasn't waiting. At 2 a.m., she slipped into a secured room in a university library where two investigative journalists were already waiting. One of them was James O'Keefe. The other was Ava Lynn, a rising independent media figure, known for her long-form documentary work. "We have 48 hours before this story becomes about me," Jasmine told them. "So we make it about them first." Keefe opened a hard case and handed her a USB. "This contains raw hearing room feeds from private angles, staffer phones, some courtroom security footage too." Jasmine frowned. "How'd you get these?" Evelyn smiled. "It's not important. What matters is what's on them." She plugged in the USB. The footage loaded. There was Patel leaning forward before he made the zoo remark. But something else flickered in frame. A man in a gray suit, not supposed to be there, tapping his watch, sending a silent signal. "Pause it," Jasmine said. O'Keefe zoomed in. "I know that man," she whispered. "Who is he?" She looked at them, her voice steady. "He's not government, not military, not media." "Then what?" She swallowed. "It's from a private security firm I investigated in my state senate days. It's the kind that gets paid to observe protests. Sometimes start them." Ava leaned back. "You think this was staged from the start?" "I think." The sun rose over Washington, D.C., but the air was far from calm. Cable news hosts interrupted their usual morning banter to report something no one expected. Kash Patel had fled the country. Jet logs confirmed he'd left U.S. airspace just before midnight. No press statement, no explanation. That alone would have been news. But it was what came next that lit the fuse. An anonymous drop arrived in the inboxes of 6 major investigative journalists, including Ava Lynn and James O'Keefe. It came from an untraceable source calling itself Midnight Protocol. The files were heavy terabytes of internal communications, encrypted recordings, partial transcripts. The title of the master folder: Project Mocking Glass, PSYOP 418A, Control Descent Flow Active. One folder was labeled Crockett Containment Strategy. Inside were detailed psychological profiles of Representative Jasmine Crockett, complete with real-time behavior predictions, keyword triggers, and emotion mapping. It was like something from a science fiction movie only. This was very real, Ava called. Jasmine immediately. "You're not a threat because of what you said," she said into the phone. "You're a threat because you weren't supposed to say it that well. You broke the script." Jasmine stood still in her hotel suite, staring at the muted TV. On screen, news anchors debated her response to Patel, twisting it into headlines like, "Congresswoman weaponizes identity politics and was Crockett too calculated." It was all coordinated, a campaign to reduce her into noise. But now, Jasmine had the playbook. She turned to Marcus. "Release the files." "All of them?" he asked. "Yes, with context and visuals. Let them see the beast behind the curtain." 2 hours later, hashtag Project Mocking Glass began trending worldwide. Screenshots flooded Twitter, Reddit, and independent news channels. The documents showed something larger than a racist comment in Congress. They revealed a multi-agency influence. Operation 1 designed to predict, manipulate, and suppress certain political figures through artificial outrage, misdirection, and engineered scandals. But the biggest shock came from a video buried deep in the files. It was footage from inside a private think tank in Virginia, the Athena Group. In it, a man in a gray suit, the same man spotted in the hearing room, gave a presentation to a boardroom of silent donors. "Crockett is moving to clean," he said. "We assumed anger, we got eloquence. We assumed fire, we got strategy. She's not a personality, we've misclassified her. She's a threat to the model." He gestured toward a digital heat map of social media spikes and press narratives. "We control the slope of the national dialogue. She just broke the algorithm. So soft pivot. Frame her as manufactured elite and isolate the populist base. One donor asked, and Patel. The man smiled. Expendable. He served the distraction function. We'll reroute him to Zurich for emotional decompression, then plug him into another thread. The headline cycle will handle the rest. Jasmine watched the clip in silence. So, she said, turning to Ava and O'Keefe. We're not fighting people anymore. We're fighting programming. Meanwhile, in Zurich, Kash Patel sat in a penthouse suite, watching everything unravel on his tablet. The news, the leaks, the footage, all of it. He was silent until the room's secure line rang. He answered, a woman's voice, robotic but familiar. You've been burned, you know protocol. He hesitated. Why didn't anyone stop her? Because your ego wrote a check the system couldn't cover. You triggered what we call narrative drift. Patel muttered. Then what do we do now? The line clicked. No more what? Now it's who. She's the variable. And variables get erased. Click. By nightfall, Jasmine received an encrypted message through an old burner email account she hadn't used in years. Subject line. They're coming. Attached was a photo of a plane manifest. Patel's name, Zurich to DC, arrival within 48 hours. But something about it was wrong. She zoomed in. Patel wasn't returning alone. Next to his name was someone. She recognized from the Athena footage L. Draymore, codenamed the Architect, one of the top designers of psychological warfare simulations for the U.S. military later. Privatized under Athena Group's Influence Ops. Jasmine sat back. They're not just coming to respond, they're coming to reclaim the story. Marcus spoke without looking up from his laptop. Then we go first. He tapped a few keys and turned the screen to her. You're going live in 30 minutes. What platform? All of them. Simultaneously. Full drop. Full truth. She nodded. No stage. No teleprompter. Just her voice, her face, and the truth they'd tried to control. Jasia, entering the room, handed her a black blazer and a quiet nod of support. Jasmine took a deep breath. This isn't about me anymore, she said. This is about who's really writing the script. Across the country, phones lit up, YouTube, Instagram, X, Twitch, a sudden broadcast from Congresswoman Crockett's verified account. It was just her sitting at a desk, eyes level with the camera. Tonight, she said, you're not watching politics. You're watching what's behind politics. The broadcast began with no theme music, no cuts, no flashy lower thirds. Just a single camera, low light, and Jasmine Crockett. She looked directly into the lens, calm, clear, focused. I don't know if this stream will stay up, she began. I don't know how long it'll be before they shut this down. But I need to talk to you, not as a politician, not as a congresswoman, but as a citizen who has seen what lives under the floorboards of our democracy. She reached forward and lifted a printed document into view. The screen behind her lit up with real-time citations and digital timestamps from the leak. This, she said, tapping the pages, is Project Mocking Glass. You've seen glimpses, manufactured media storms, psychological profiling, selective outrage designed to pit us against each other. But this isn't theory anymore. Policy millions were watching now. On YouTube, TikTok, and even newsrooms across the globe, the stream hijacked attention. Journalists scrambled to fact-check. But Jasmine wasn't speculating. She was citing. Over the past decade, a network of private contractors, political advisors, and compromised officials have worked to manipulate the national mood. She continued. You've felt it. Every sudden wave of outrage, every distraction, every cancelable moment placed in front of a camera, not to inform you, but to program you. She took a breath. And they're scared now, because something unexpected happened. I didn't flinch when I was meant to. And I didn't stay quiet. In a command center somewhere outside Langley, 2 analysts watched the stream with expressions of dread. She's naming assets, said one, eyes wide. And she's doing it legally, said the other. She's not leaking classified intel. She's exposing a narrative design system. The supervisor entered the room. Do we take her down? Oh. The analyst replied grimly. We do it now, it confirms everything she's saying. They watched in silence. Meanwhile, in a secure underground parking garage in D.C., a black armored SUV arrived. The door opened. Kash Patel stepped out, flanked by two men in dark suits. The architect L. Draymore followed. They're watching her, Patel asked, checking his phone. They're watching everyone now, Draymore answered. Then we need a new countermeasure. Draymore smiled coldly. We already have. One, tonight she meets the override. Back on the live stream, Jasmine brought up a final file. It was labeled Echo Templates, Target Elimination, Reputation, and Digital Identity. This is the next step, she said, her tone firm. Once exposure fails, they isolate. They dismantle credibility, rewrite timelines, alter digital traces. She paused, as if debating whether to go further. Then, and this morning, I received this. She clicked. A photo appeared. A family photo, her parents, brother, and a location pin in Texas. Alongside it, a message. Pick your silence, or we pick it for you. A collective gasp rippled across viewers everywhere. I'm not afraid, she said. I'm awake now, and once you wake up, it's impossible to go back. The stream ended. In the next 20 minutes, chaos broke loose. Mainstream news anchors scrambled to respond, some casting doubt, others visibly shaken. Independent platforms crashed under the weight of replays. Stag surged. Hashtag mocking glass files. Hashtag override protocol. Hashtag we stand with Jasmine. But just as quickly, the counterstrike began. On social media, old footage of Jasmine was circulated with false subtitles. A fake email thread appeared on fringe sites, leaking her supposed ties to foreign lobbyists. Articles using AI-generated quotes accused her of mental instability. Within an hour, bots flooded her mentions. But something was different this time. This time the public knew. Users began checking sources. Independent coders traced the forgeries. Videos calling out the forgeries went more viral than the original smears. And while reputational attacks had once worked like wildfire, now they fizzled against a wall of collective awareness. But Jasmine wasn't safe. Marcus received a text from their secure channel. Override assets have left containment. Building 47 compromised. Evacuate immediately. He turned to Jasmine. They're moving faster than expected. Then we move too, she said, grabbing her coat. Outside, black vans with scrambled plates moved like shadows. The team split into two vehicles, Ava, Jasmine, and Marcus in one. Deja and two security officers in another. A digital war was now burning beneath the surface of the internet, on news stations. Two Jasmines appeared side by side, one from the live stream, the other from the override simulation. Her voice, her face, even her rhythm, but something was off. One blinked less. One paused too long between answers. One avoided the word justice. It didn't matter to millions watching at home. Confusion spread like fire. Which one is real? Why would she change her story overnight? Journalists struggled. Editors hesitated. Half the anchors read corporate-approved scripts. Other half walked off air mid-broadcast. Some viewers stopped watching entirely. Others kept watching, desperate to find a single truth in the noise. Meanwhile, in a hidden safe house outside D.C., Jasmine Crockett sat surrounded by her team. The room was quiet. Deja stared at the screen where both Jasmines now filled the trending tabs. They moved faster than we thought, she muttered. The override is adapting in real time. Marcus was at his laptop, typing furiously. They're using synthetic bias seeding. Every platform they touch already leans toward the clone. Comments, views, likes, all fake. All bots. The system is rigged before the audience even sees it. Jasmine didn't speak. She sat alone in the corner, watching the faces flicker between real and fake. "They're not just trying to erase me," she said finally. "They're trying to erase the idea of me." Everyone looked up. Jasmine stood, slowly, purposefully. "Then we changed the rules." At exactly 8 p.m., every phone in America buzzed at once. National Public Emergency Test. This is a priority message from House. Oversight unredacted audio release. Millions tapped play. The screen stayed black, only audio came through. But the voice was unmistakable. Kash Patel, then Draymore. Then, shockingly, a current senator speaking of synthetic suppression, Project Framework, and Jasmine Crockett's perception management. It was damning. All of it had been pulled from the Vice mainframe. Ava had broken in within 20 minutes. The hashtags flipped. Hashtag the real Jasmine, hashtag override exposed. Hashtag mocking glass Israel media anchors now demanded transparency. House leaders called emergency press conferences. And suddenly, the world remembered why they trusted Jasmine in the first place. Not just because of what she said, because she never blinked first. But the system didn't go down easy in a steel bunker 300 feet below Virginia. It's the architect. Paced. "She shouldn't have survived the override," he whispered. "She didn't," Patel snapped. "The people just don't care anymore. They picked her over us." Even with the clone, the architect stared at the flickering hologram, the digital Jasmine growing more unstable by the second. "It's unraveling," the tech whispered. "Delete it," Draymore ordered. "We can't. The code's recursive." She infected. The clone's root files. It's a beat of silence. She turned her twin into a Trojan horse, because his voice said from a hacked feed that now played through every screen in the room. Then the lights shut off. Darkness swallowed the override facility. Back. In Washington, the real Jasmine stepped onto the Capitol steps. Not a sound from the hundreds gathered. Only cell phones raised. A sea of silent witnesses. She spoke calmly, but the wind seemed too still for her voice. "For too long, we've mistaken surveillance for security. We've accepted influence as news. We've let private systems tell us who to believe, what to feel, and who we are." She looked directly into the cameras, but truth, real truth, doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be seen. She held up a drive. "This contains all project files, all operators, all funding trails. I won't leak it to media. Hand it over to you." She turned, handed it to a high school senior from Chicago who'd flown in after watching her stream. "Make your own judgment." And just like that, she stepped back. No mic drop, no slogan. Just silence and trust. The fallout was swift by morning. Resignations rolled in from tech CEOs, lobbyists, congressional insiders, and Pentagon contractors. A second hearing was scheduled, this time public, this time global. And this time, Jasmine wasn't just a participant, she was leading it. C-SPAN aired the full session. The opening words came from her. "We will not rewrite truth. We will restore it." Days later, in an empty late-night studio, Jimmy Kimmel sat staring into the dark dot. No audience. No laughter. He pressed play on the segment that never aired the original interview with Jasmine before the chaos. Before the clone. She had laughed once. Just once. And he hadn't noticed what was behind that smile. "Hell of a guest," he whispered. In a small house in Baltimore, a child asked her father, "Who is Jasmine Crockett?" "Ah." The father turned off the TV and smiled. "She's the woman." Who made the truth go viral? The screen faded to black dot. One line remained. "Narrative is power, but memory is rebellion." End of transmission.